these 2 days isn't gonna fix anything. But the conversation and the statement that's been made is very powerful, especially coming from this league.
It's a league that was criticized for playing yesterday, but today the NHL joined the NBA and other pro sports organizations in postponing games as athletes use their voice to demand change. Good evening, I'm Marivel Tarouk, and welcome to our viewers in Ottawa tonight. We weren't supposed to be on the air tonight, actually, because of the hockey playoffs. But after criticism from commentators, fans, even its own players, the NHL has suspended all games until Saturday in support of protests against police violence and racial injustice. Greg Ross has the latest.
For the second straight night, the court in the NBA bubble will remain empty.
We are living in an incredible time when sports has become the leading trendsetter for racial justice in our communities.
It all started earlier this week after a video went viral of Jacob Blake being shot 7 times in the back by a police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin. It was clear that players in the NBA had had enough.
I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but we are scared as black people in America. Black men, black women, black kids, we are terrified.
We came here for a reason and using our platform and wanting to send a message and hopefully bring awareness and bring a change. But I don't know, it just feels like we stuck.
That led to talk of teams refusing to play games, something the Milwaukee Bucks did last night, not coming to the floor to play their game against the Orlando Magic. It set off a chain reaction, with the NBA postponing all of its games Wednesday. Teams in the WNBA, Major League Baseball, and Major League Soccer joined in the protest. In all, more than a dozen games were postponed.
It's been impressive watching the leadership coming out of the NBA, coming out of the WNBA, coming out of sports in general right now. The leadership in supporting Black lives. It's unfortunate that it's not coming from some of our politicians and from some of the more likely sources.
I don't think we should be here. I think the NHL should postpone the games.
Despite opinions from some hockey broadcasters, the NHL did go ahead as scheduled. But there was backlash from players like Evander Kane of the San Jose Sharks, who tweeted this today. We have formally requested the NHL suspend all playoff games today. We strongly feel it sends a clear message that human rights take priority over sports.
There's been a known issue with race within hockey. You know, we've heard from players of color who have spoken out a little bit about some of the race issues in hockey, and I think that now is the time to turn a different page and to stand with all of the folks who are across sports, coming out against racial injustice and coming out in support of Black lives.
The NHL sent out a statement just after 6 o'clock this evening confirming that they have indeed postponed all games tonight and tomorrow night. They'll resume their playoff schedule on Saturday. The WNBA also postponed all of its games on Thursday, and several games in Major League Baseball were postponed, including the Toronto Blue Jays, who were scheduled to play the Boston Red Sox. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, more members of the National Guard are being sent to Kenosha, Wisconsin, as protests over the shooting continue. National Guard members from Arizona, Alabama, and Michigan are being sent to assist police in the city, which is about 45 minutes south of Milwaukee. Kenosha has been the scene of unrest since Sunday's police shooting of Jacob Blake, which happened in front of his children. Blake survived, but may be paralyzed. U.S. President Donald Trump wouldn't say today if he has seen the video of the incident, but he did weigh in on the protest by NBA players.
I don't know much about the NBA protest. I know their ratings have been very bad because I think people are a little tired of the NBA, frankly. But I don't know too much about the protest. But I know their ratings have been very bad, and that's unfortunate. They become like a political organization, and that's not a good thing.
Lawyers for the Blake family are calling for the officer who shot Blake to be arrested. Back here in Ontario, plans for back to school are coming along, but it's still hard to imagine exactly what a day in the classroom will look like come September. Ali Chiasson got a sneak peek inside a Scarborough High School today to find out how different things will be.
First up, screening. Teachers will be firmly in their classrooms or monitoring traffic in the hallways, while other staff will be doing this work, even the principal.
We need all of us. as a team to come together to do this work so everybody feels safe. Have a great day.
Hallways are divided like streets, student traffic flowing in either direction, divided by trash cans. Even on media day, you can tell this is a work in progress.
It'll be troubleshooting, a great deal of troubleshooting.
Especially when it comes to classrooms.
This is a typical history classroom for us.
Next week, teachers will be allowed in to rearrange seating and take note of any challenges.
These desks don't look 6 feet apart.
Yeah, so that's the piece that some of these desks we're gonna have to maneuver out of here.
Do you think you can fit a full amount of
15.
students?
All we need is 15 in one class. I think spacing it properly and moving these desks out, we should have no problem with it.
Just sitting here, it feels a little stuffy. Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about ventilation in schools. How do you feel about it here?
I feel like during September and October, while it's still a bit warm outside, it's going to be a little bit difficult. But once it gets to winter, I think everybody will be adjusted and used to it by then.
It feels weird because I'm not used to this and wearing the mask, but it's what you have to do.
Coming back to school after what's felt like the longest March break ever is going to feel weird in every way. No lockers, no cafeteria, half days in class, the rest of the day online.
But that means we're not going to have classes with our friends probably. We're going to have just a few kids, and there's not always the chance that your friends will be in it.
Are you going to miss the old way?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for it to go back, but it's so much better to be here than just sitting at home. So
it's going to take some getting used to, but after today, they can at least picture it.
I think at first, until everyone gets the hang of it and knows what they're doing, it'll be pretty chaotic with people not knowing where to go, how to properly get around the school, where to sit. But I think after maybe a week or two, it should be calm and everyone will know what they're doing. It'll just be a routine.
Now, Allie took a tour of an elementary school today, too, and you can watch that online at cbc.ca/Toronto. The Premier announcing today that the province will upgrade 3 jails and build 2 new ones, including a long-awaited facility in the Ottawa region. It's part of a $500 million plan to modernize the corrections system in Eastern Ontario. Amanda Pfeffer has the details.
Well, they're making a major capital investment in new and renovated facilities, including a brand new jail, as you mentioned, right here in the Ottawa region. It's called the new Greater Ottawa Correctional Complex, and it's going to be on an existing government-owned site in Kemptville. They're going to renovate Ottawa Carleton Detention Centre, and they want that centre to be a place for programming for inmates and other initiatives directed around them. They're going to replace the Brockville jail with a new facility, and this jail is the oldest in Ontario, built in 1842, and it's going to be moved over onto the existing St. Lawrence Valley Correctional and Treatment Centre campus. Now, that centre is being expanded, as well as the Quinte Detention Centre, to improve mental health services.
The St. Lawrence Valley Correctional and Treatment Centre, where we are here today, will be expanded with a dedicated unit for female inmates. The centre partners with the Royal Ottawa Hospital, one of Canada's foremost mental health centres, to deliver secure, rehabilitative programs for male inmates with severe mental health issues. And as part of our Eastern strategy, these programs will be available to female inmates also.
So we're getting a reaction from the union representing jail officers. Smokey Thomas is with the Ontario Public Service Employees Union. He's being told that the new jails will feature single-unit cells, no more double bunking, and no more isolation for inmates just because there's nowhere else to put them. Now, he says these facilities had been promised for decades, and there was a lot at stake.
More deaths, more heartache, more human rights violations, because in double, triple bunking, even double bunking in segregation, so they would have just kept running afoul of human rights cases and frankly just running afoul of human decency.
Not everyone is happy with this new investment. We did speak to inmate advocates who would have preferred a major investment in jail alternatives outside in the community. Now, because these projects still have to go through a procurement process, there are no details in just how much these facilities will cost, and there are no details in when they'll be ready to open. Amanda Pfeffer, CBC News, Ottawa.
A powerful storm continues to move north into Arkansas after pounding Texas and Louisiana last night. Hurricane Laura is blamed for the deaths of at least 4 people. They were all killed when trees fell on their homes. The storm made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane near the Louisiana-Texas border overnight. It knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of homes and caused flash flooding. More than 500,000 people fled to higher ground. Laura has been downgraded to a tropical storm and is hammering southern Arkansas with heavy rain and strong winds.
Laura may have made landfall along the Gulf Coast, but it's going to have an impact on our weather coming up into the weekend. I'll tell you how coming up.
We have new details tonight about a Toronto dentist charged with sex assault and sexual interference involving minors. CBC News has learned the Royal College of Dental Surgeons of Ontario has taken disciplinary action against Dr. Amir Haydarian. Haydarian can continue to practice, but he must have an independent monitor trained in preventing sex assault present. He also has to post a sign in his office, making patients aware of that monitor and notifying patients that he can't treat anyone under the age of 18. We first told you about Dr. Haydarian earlier this month. The 54-year-old has been allowed to continue practicing despite facing charges in late June of assault, sex assault, and sexual interference. Some of the alleged victims are under 16 and are patients at Haydarian's Mount Pleasant clinic. His lawyer tells CBC News his client intends to plead not guilty to the charges. The Special Investigations Unit has released the name of the man shot and killed by police in Haliburton last month after a dispute over wearing a mask in a supermarket. OPP officers shot and killed 73-year-old Leslie Hedges during a standoff at his home after he allegedly refused to wear a mask at a nearby Value Mart and allegedly assaulted a store employee. At the time of the incident, CBC News was able to locate and speak to some of Hedges' relatives in the GTA who say he became estranged from the family about 30 years ago and had refused to attend family functions since. His neighbors painted a picture of a reclusive man who was sometimes even hostile. The SIU investigation into the shooting continues. Well, with runs, walks, and hundreds of other fundraising events canceled over the last few months because of the pandemic, nonprofits are feeling the pinch. As Talia Ricci reports, it's had a big impact on a Toronto organization that supports people with Down syndrome.
High fives and encouraging signs were missing from Ashbridges Bay this year.
The Buddy Walk is our largest and only fundraising initiative.
The Buddy Walk normally brings hundreds of people together to raise awareness and funds for the Down Syndrome Association of Toronto.
We have a 60% funding gap from what we've been able to raise in previous years.
Nisha Hassan is a board member and also her brother Ryan's biggest fan. With a lack of funding and physical distancing measures, his social calendar has taken a hit. Some of the events have been replaced with virtual activities like bingo.
But he waits around, he waits around for 7 p.m. on Sunday to do bingo. We do see that more and more, he needs us to kind of be there for him and champion that virtual connection for him because, again, it's a learning curve for him as well.
Ryan is a pretty positive teen, but admits that some days feel slow.
I just bored and doing nothing.
There's not a lot to do sometimes, right?
The province says it's providing support in various ways to organizations like nonprofits, including introducing a new grant program this month. But the vice president of the Down Syndrome Association of Toronto says being a small organization, mostly run by volunteers, makes things tough.
It's a huge challenge. For us, in our community, Buddy Walk, we would have, close to hundreds, close to 500 people attend. We'd raise thousands of dollars for that one day. And when that's no longer available or viable, it's going to impact you. Individuals with developmental challenges and disabilities have not adapted as well during the pandemic, during, the confines of being stuck at home.
The association will continue adapting to virtual events, and despite the challenges, Hassan remains optimistic about keeping the program around as long as they can.
Our services now and the connection and support that we provide are so much more important now than ever before, because there's an element of loneliness, because there's a lack of resources.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
A group looking at the possible renaming of streets, parks, and other city property linked to racist history has found there are a lot of problematic names in Toronto. The group began its work after the city received a petition to rename Dundas Street. Yesterday, it presented its findings so far to the city's Aboriginal Affairs Advisory Committee. Angelina King has more on what the city is considering.
Toronto has more than 6,000 named streets and 1,500 parks. They're all being looked at along with other city property by a group examining possible links to racism. In a virtual meeting, the group said the project isn't about erasing history, but
addressing how racism is systematically embedded in the city's urban landscape.
the group was created at the request of the mayor in response to a petition to rename Dundas Street. It's named after Henry Dundas, who obstructed the abolition of slavery in the 1700s.
It won't rectify what happened, but at least it's a step. If you know the history, it's hurtful definitely for people in the Black community to know the history and then still see the name.
Taking into account costs and impact to people and businesses, the city is considering 4 different options when it comes to renaming the street. Do nothing, which is not recommended by city staff. Keep the name but add interpretation and recognitions. Keep it but rename other things like the park, library, and Young Dundas Square, or rename everything with the word Dundas in it, including TTC routes and Dundas Station. But it's not just Dundas Street.
We are looking at street names, we are looking at honorifics, we are looking at awards, we are looking quite broadly at parks, we're looking across the city.
The group says that includes the Sir Winston Churchill statue and other streets named after slave owners, like the Bobby Point neighborhood and Jarvis Street, after William Jarvis, who had 6 slaves.
He held these slaves and they worked for him to help boost his own economy in his own home. That needs to be understood, like where the names of those slaves.
An anonymous person has already taken matters into their own hands, putting up temporary plaques explaining the history of certain street names and their connection to slavery.
It's all about education at the end of the day, healing the racial divide through education.
Remember the 400, a group that works to educate people about slavery, suggests the city names streets after slaves who lived in Toronto as a way to honor them. And the city says that public input will be a big part of this process. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
The heat and humidity have returned across the GTA. Colette is here with the forecast. Not everyone is feeling this heat, Colette.
Thanks, Marivel. Boy, oh boy, do you want to talk about contrast and a warm front having an impact. Look at this today with the temperatures. Windsor, more than double the temperature this afternoon of what you had in Ottawa. That's just incredible, and a little closer to that in terms of Toronto where you were there. So the warmer air and then the humidex values, well, maybe 29 in Toronto, but it was feeling like the upper 30s. And then not only that, do we have to talk about that heat and humidity, but how about the tropical air mass, of course, the remnants of Laura. And guess what? That's going to be making its way up here towards the Great Lakes and having an impact on us as well. So already we have that frontal boundary and the moisture along that, even some severe and active weather earlier today. We're going to add that moisture from Laura into this, and that's going to be bringing some significant rainfall up, especially around the Niagara region. So what happens as we go into the later afternoon hours here into Friday, yes, we'll have some rain earlier than that, but it'll be into the later afternoon and evening hours. We'll start to see some heavier thunderstorms. With some of those embedded storms, we'll get some heavier downpours towards the evening hours on Friday and then overnight into Saturday morning. And yes, you see it takes over. It's not just for southwestern Ontario and the Niagara region, but all the way into eastern Ontario as well. But I point out the Niagara region because that's kind of that target area where we'll be seeing some of the heavier amounts. It's in that region where it may be 30 to 50 millimeters or more that we'll get as a total through here. Over towards Toronto, it's more like 20 to 30 millimeters, and you'll be seeing more significant amounts like that eventually there towards the Ottawa Valley before this moves out. Yes, towards Saturday into the afternoon, evening hours, it will be pushing well away from the lower Great Lakes. You'll still be dealing with it into eastern Ontario, and then it pulls away Saturday night from you as well, so that everyone gets a better day for Sunday for that second half of the weekend. But the special weather statement through the areas you see here in green, and that's where we get into that 50 millimeters of rain potential there for even more than that. Tonight into southwestern Ontario, your temperature's looking like this. That's your story there, with some scattered thunderstorms still possible. I know it was already a busy day today. Tomorrow afternoon, the temperature's looking like this, but never mind that. The humidex values are still going to be in the low 30s. Tonight around the GTA, 17 to 20 degrees. Tomorrow afternoon, kind of similar to today, a slightly cooler in terms of the readings. And yeah, another day, well, night where you're seeing some of the cooler readings, and then slightly warmer through the Ottawa region with your temperatures tomorrow all the way back towards Kingston, getting into some low 20s there. The 5-day forecast for Toronto, once you get through that rain, Saturday, later afternoon, evening looking better, and certainly although it's cooler with those temperatures Sunday into the beginning of next week, the sun does come back out again. Maribel.
Hanging on to summer, I like it. Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Students in Toronto will be back in class in just over 2 weeks, but some students with disabilities and special needs will keep learning online. That's because their parents aren't confident the classroom will work for them. Lorenda Redekop explains.
This is my new backpack. I have a pencil case with these in it.
Avery Thornbury has been excited about back to school for months. She's going into grade 9. But in the end, her parents decided to stick with online learning.
I like it. It's okay, but I just want to go to my school. But it's really hard. I like going to high school. I just want the virus to be done.
You want the virus to be done?
Yeah.
With her cognitive delays, her mom says Avery is at a grade 2 level. Plus, she has epilepsy and a choking disorder.
My daughter can't wear a mask for longer than 15 minutes without being completely frustrated. So I thought if they have to wear a mask, she's going to have difficulties. And if they don't, then I'm sending my child to a classroom where there are students not wearing masks. So for us, it was kind of a lose-lose situation.
Today, Stats Canada released results of a survey done in June, looking at parent concerns during COVID-19. Those who have children with disabilities expressed higher levels of concern in all areas. The biggest difference, the school year and academic success. This mother and autism advocate wishes the government had released plans earlier. Her daughter will also be learning online as her husband is immune compromised.
Students like my daughter here who has an exceptionality, they're 1 in 6. And so, you have to be planning with these kids in mind from day one. You can't leave it to the last minute.
The province has promised more than $22 million for special needs and mental health, some of that money from the federal government.
I specifically called the Minister of Education today to discuss children with special needs, and we're going to make sure they're able to get back in the classroom safely. They have the same rights as every other child.
School boards are still finalizing their plans for special needs, both online and in the classroom. It's too late for some families. They've already decided to stick with learning at home. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto's PATH system is used by more than 200,000 people daily who walk through the underground corridors, offices, shops, and restaurants. But since the pandemic forced widespread closures, traffic in the PATH slowed to a trickle. Today, I spoke with the head of the Financial District's BIA to find out how the PATH has changed in the wake of COVID-19.
As this started, one of the things the buildings realized, we got together
and knew that we were going to have to change some things down here, that physical distancing was very much part of the norm in terms of how we'd be operating going forward, and we had to promote that. So the types of things you'll find as you enter the path. So we're trying to promote the physical distancing, which is now part of how we live our everyday lives in the path environment. So you'll see here we also have, as we go farther down, a little ways farther down there, but actual stickers on the floor that show directional flows. In the case of the piece of the path we're in right now, what they've done here is they've removed a substantial number of tables so that there's physical distancing for everybody who sits in here. So if you're in your office and you come down here and you just grab some lunch to go, you're in a position to not have to worry about somebody being that distance away. The other thing that is really important in the path for people to realize is that the path is being treated as part of the public space. So in these large office towers, in the lobbies and in the path, masks are mandatory. That's why we're talking today with our masks on.
How much of that was taken into consideration that there's so much real estate that the path takes up, and usually thousands upon thousands of people walking through there, that there wasn't sort of like a piecemeal sort of set of guidelines for people to follow?
Well, I think the thing is here is that as people come back, it's important that they get confidence and comfort. And, it's very difficult to publish guidelines. There's lots of signage, lots of floor decals have been applied, and they're done in a consistent fashion across the building. So it's not like building 1 does this and building 2 does that. So you've got a similar set of expectations. These buildings never closed. So all the way through this, these buildings have had trading floors and compliance operations for banks. People have been in these buildings every day all the way through since March. The return to work that we envision, everybody sees it as being a gradual increase. Sort of the next cohort coming back after Labor Day when schools reopen, probably a second cohort in October after Thanksgiving as it starts to ramp back up. So it's not like if you're arriving here after Labor Day, it's all of a sudden going to be back to where it was in terms of the people. You're going to see an environment much closer to what you see today, probably a little busier, but certainly very manageable in terms of distancing and comfort and everything else.
Now let's talk a bit about the shops, because we've come through the food court, but here we're seeing a bit more of a variety of shops, and a number of them are open. But take me back to sort of the beginning of the pandemic and what the impact was on these businesses.
Well, I think down here was pretty much consistent with what you saw on other streets. Essential stores continue to be open, so pharmacies, and there's actually some grocery stores in the path, they continue to be open, as did the liquor store. But non-essential services were closed down, so all of the self-care businesses, et cetera, and regular retail. There was always some food service of some type open in the food courts, because I said before, these buildings were always open. There was always people in the buildings, but they were very limited in terms of number.
How bad was the economic impact in this section?
It was very difficult. I mean, the reality is that the path is dependent on the workday population. And so with the workday population's not here, your ability to run these places properly. Some stayed open for a little bit and clearly saw there was no customers. I don't think any of us thought it would be September and we're having the conversation about ramping stuff up. We thought it would be much sooner. We've done a pretty good job of adjusting things.
Well, 2 months ago, we told you about this group of 6 friends from the GTA. They lost their jobs as camp counselors as a result of COVID-19 and decided to put their spare time to good use. They started a 2-month, 2,000-kilometer canoe trip across Ontario, dubbed Canoe for COVID, raising funds for food banks and Indigenous communities impacted by the pandemic. The trip started north of Thunder Bay and ended in Ottawa Monday. Today, they received a special recognition from back home in Toronto.
Just want to say a little thank you to you from the bottom of our hearts for going that extra mile to help those in need. You are really the true Ontario spirit, so thank you very much.
It's been so amazing to have so much support and hospitality from people all along the way, and this just goes to show this is just more of it right here.
We had a lot of good times and tough times along the way, but we made it and helped out some people along the way.
For most of us, the first thing we wanted when we got back was a nice warm shower, a pillow under our heads, and for me personally, a nice warm coffee. I've been drinking instant coffee for like the entire canoe trip, so to have some nice proper French press this morning, that was special.
It's the little things, isn't it? Well, you can see they each received an honorary scroll from the Ontario government thanking them for their efforts. The men had a $60,000 fundraising goal for the trip. They ended up with just under $80,000. Really great work, guys. And that's our show for you tonight. Thank you for watching. You can get caught up on the day's news anytime on our website, cbc.ca/Toronto. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great show, great night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.